The source of your power in life is your attitude towards the world. It's your lens. It's your way of looking at the world. Everybody's lens is different. You're not seeing things exactly as they are. You're seeing them filtered through how you look at them. Your goal in life is to become more realistic, to be able to step back and look at things as they are. And how do you get there is the question. So first, you have to see that as your goal, and it has to be important to you, and it has to be something that you want. And it's not just something that's cold and dry and scientific. The key thing is it goes back to our nature and how we evolved as conscious animals. The key thing is there's an animal part of our nature, which is we completely take appearances for reality. That's sort of the source of our problems and our misery, to be honest with in life. So the front that people present, the way they look, the way they talk to us, their words, we sort of take at face value. And although we might think, or we might know from reading a book or whatever, that you can't always trust appearances, it's kind of a cliche. We can't control ourselves. So it makes us extremely vulnerable to charming people, to charlatans, to con artists, to politicians who say one thing, who do another, to relationships, terrible relationships, where we fall in love with exactly the wrong person. So this is kind of ingrained in our nature. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's extremely difficult to overcome. We're so embedded in language that we think everything in terms of what people say. But unconsciously, without even realizing it, we're continually judging people on their nonverbal behavior, right? So there's their eyes, their smile, are different from what they actually say. But we're not really. So in a kind of a natural, intuitive way, we understand that. But we don't trust those kind of judgments, right? So we rely more on what they say than on what the signals that we pick up from their body language. Not through what they say, but through their body, through particularly their tone of voice and all the other signals. That is a number that is the main way of judging. You know, what's really going on. The other thing you look at are people's patterns of behavior, right? Things that have happened in the past. As I said in Laws of Human Nature, nobody ever does something just once, right? If somebody fucks up and does something kind of hurts you in some way, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. That's not me." Don't trust that. It'll happen again for sure. It will happen again a second, a third, fourth time. So there's a perverse part of human nature, which is oftentimes in early childhood. Something happened to us, often something that didn't happen to us, like the love we didn't get, or the nurturing that we didn't get. There's this kind of wound, this emptiness, this lack, right? And we grow up and we're not really aware of it. And kind of things grow over this wound. But what also happens, which is the perverse side of human nature, is that early on, our kind of sexual excitement is kind of grows up around that wound. You know, when you're very young, you're extremely vulnerable. You're extremely open to the energies of other people in ways we don't understand right now, right? It's hard to imagine when you're 2 years old, 1 years old. Before you even had really mastered language, you're so dependent on other people. You're so open to them that their energy gets infused. It's completely internalized. And also, children at that age also have their sort of sexual nature is being created at that moment, at a very, very early age. Certain desires, for us, sex is not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing, right? It's psychological. So things that we didn't get are charged with all of this kind of energy that then could later on turn into sort of desires. So let's say, for instance, you had a mother who was very narcissistic, who really wasn't giving you the normal mother, nurturing, empathetic energy. It was more about her, and you had to pay attention to her, right? Well, that kind of creates this sort of desire. You're as an infant, you really want that love from that mother. You're trying to attract and pull it out of her as best you can. And your energy, your desire is surrounding her with this kind of emotional charge, sexual energy. And you're going to find throughout your life, you're going to be attracted to narcissistic women. It's going to be your Achilles heel throughout your life because you want to kind of heal that wound. You want to be able to play back that initial trauma and sort of rewrite the way it ended up, where now you're going to find this narcissistic woman and she's going to give you finally what you never had before, right? It's a very, very common pattern, right? And so you're not even aware of this. And it's extremely difficult to break out of because your desire is for this type of person. So you might meet a woman, just doing it from a man's point of view, who isn't narcissistic, who's very empathetic and very caring, and she would be perfect for you. And you may even have a relationship with her. But the excitement, the energy, that charge isn't going to be as strong as with that other type. And you're going to fall back into the old patterns again and again and again. And the only way out of it is to go back and look at your early childhood and look at these wounds and confront them face to face and understand that you're a prisoner of these kind of things that were ingrained in you at a very, very early age. First of all, it depends on how old you are and how many relationships you have, but you have to see your own patterns. And if you have unhealthy patterns where you have fallen again and again and again for the wrong person, you have to see a sort of a through line there. What ties it all together? What's going on, right? So after 6 months, the relationship is kind of, growing. You'll find some excuse. She's not right for me. She's saying the wrong things. She's duh. You'll break off the relationship blaming her when in fact you're afraid, deeply afraid that she's going to abandon you and you can't stand that. So you've got to see these patterns and they're very painful and they're very difficult because they're touching upon things that go to the heart of who we are. It's not just in your relationships. You're going to probably be doing that with your jobs as well. You're going to be quitting jobs before you get to the point where you have too much responsibility. They're very, very deeply ingrained in you, and you have to be able to look at them. So awareness is everything. The ability to look at yourself realistically and understand, you're saying see things as they are. See the world as it is. It begins with yourself, seeing yourself as you are, right? And seeing that your adult self that's so confident and has this way about the world is covering over some wounds, some vulnerabilities from your deep childhood. Not everybody, but for a lot of people, that's the case. You have to be willing to rip away the skin and look underneath and see that wound and touch upon it and then kind of analyze it and sort of see the patterns in your life. So sometimes, you need help in these areas, depending on the depth of the wound. So sometimes you need a third person's eyes on it. You can't necessarily analyze it yourself, which is why you might want to go into therapy, or you might want a spouse or significant other or someone you love and trust who can tell you these things. Because sometimes it's very hard for you to have any kind of distance from them. But the ability to detach yourself from your own emotions is extremely important in life. It doesn't mean that you become a cold, rational person at all. I don't believe in that at all. Emotions are extremely important for us. It's what makes us creative. It what feeds our imagination, gives us drive. But the ability that you can gain over your life in this instant and in every other instant to have a degree of detachment, not only a matter of degree, where you can stand back and you feel something very powerfully. You feel attracted to something or a person. You feel excited or repulsed, and to not react and to step back and analyze and go, why am I feeling this right now? Is it because of what somebody is saying right now? Or does it go deeper to that? Is it related to some other issue? That is a skill that is not easy, but you can develop it day by day by day, taking little steps. And so if you're able to slowly detach yourself from your day-to-day emotional reactions, it gives you a little bit of distance between you and your ego, your level of desire for change. So if you're trapped in these patterns and you feel a great degree of pain and your life isn't going anywhere and you're having bad relationships, bad work habits, and you say, I can't deal with this anymore, you're extremely motivated after every event that occurs. You go through a kind of an autopsy, right? And you analyze. You can do this on a daily basis with a journal, or you can do it on a weekly basis. And I have to be reasonably rational and I have to be reasonably realistic. You're right. If we saw it completely into ourselves, we would hate ourselves so thoroughly that we wouldn't get out of bed. We would all be killing ourselves. You do need a degree of illusion. You do need a degree of self-esteem and confidence, right? And what happens is, it's kind of like an internal thermostat. And so you have like people who are what I call deep narcissists, who have no kind of sense, no anchor inside of them, no real sense, self-esteem to hold on to. And when that self-esteem starts going down, down, they have no way of dealing with it. And their only way of dealing with it is acting out in the way that narcissists act out. So we all have, if we're not a deep narcissist, we have that thermostat where things start hurting us a little bit and we bring ourselves back up through this self-esteem mechanism so we don't get too depressed and too down. There's an element of unreality to that, but it's very valuable, and I would never, ever, ever want to burst that. You need a degree of illusion in your life. It's very important. But if you really want change, if you're really fed up, if you're not kidding yourself, if you're not going through this process, yeah, I kind of want to change my life, but you don't really mean it, then no words, no therapy will ever get you to that point. You almost have to hit bottom. You almost have to tell yourself, I can't take this anymore. And now the motivation is so deep that you're able now to go through, to begin the process of going through that kind of self-analysis, because it's the only way you're going to get out of it. It's the only way. Social media, for all the good that it does, makes it very hard to be self-reflective. When you compare yourself, your standard is always what other people are doing, right? They're on these great vacations. He's got a great job. That's not looking at myself. That's always having the other person as the standard. It makes us so out in the world in other people, what other people are saying, what other people are doing, makes us continually think in the social sense and not able to turn inside and look at who we are, what makes us different. We're so attuned to what's cool, to what other people are doing out there, what other people are saying, that we lose kind of an intuitive grasp of who we are. And if you're so attuned to what other people are saying and doing and telling you and thinking, that voice gets drowned out by a million other voices and you're not able to hear yourself anymore. And it's very hard to take a step back and actually look at yourself and analyze yourself. Because to be able to do what you're talking about, you have to be willing to be alone. You have to be willing to close the door in your room, write down and say, this is what's going on. This is what happened. This is what I did. This is what they did. You can't be out there in the world and do this. It's impossible to do that process because you're going to be sucked into the social dynamic and you won't be able to think about yourself. The source of your power in life is your attitude towards the world. It's your lens. It's your way of looking at the world. Everybody's lens is different. You're not seeing things exactly as they are. You're seeing them filtered through how you look at them. Some people are optimistic and adventurous. Some people are anxious and closed. So the lens that you want a lens that clarifies things. You want a lens that's realistic, that you're trying to see things as they are, right? It's good to be excited, but sometimes if you're too excited and too adventurous, you're going to walk right up to that tiger and they're going to eat you alive. Sometimes you have to be a little bit wary of things. You have to see your circumstances for what they are. In military terms, they call it situational awareness. You're very aware, crystal clear about who you are, about who other people are, about what the world is like. So that's the attitude that you want to craft for yourself in this world. And it's very difficult. Your goal in life is to become more realistic, to be able to step back and look at things as they are. And how do you get there is the question. So first, you have to see that as your goal. And it has to be important to you. And it has to be something that you want. And it's not just something that's cold and dry and scientific. If you're able to see inside of yourself with a degree of realism, you'll be able to understand this is what I was destined to be in life. This is what I call my life's task. This is the career that fits me, that suits me. So if you're able to have that realism when you're 22 years old, you're not going to suddenly go off on this wrong career path that's going to make you miserable, make you an alcoholic by the time you're 30. You're going to have a degree of direction in life. It's incredibly liberating. It's incredibly powerful to be able to see inside of yourself and know what you were destined for and what makes you you. Other people wear masks. They smile, but their smile doesn't mean anything, and you don't see them. They're very tricky. These are people who've learned to disguise themselves. You're going to get sucked into all these dramas and traumas with these people. It can make your life miserable. You have to be patient. You have to know it's a process. You can't get ahead of yourself. You can't get ahead of your skis. It's going to take day by day by day by day. You have to build it up. You're working against your own nature. You're working against the times. So be patient, be compassionate with yourself, and learn to take these baby steps.